Lieutenant Marla checked her orders one last time. This was no ordinary mission. She was sent by the Intergalactic Security Agency, known for handling some of the galaxy's most dangerous secrets. Marla was a top agent, trained in combat, diplomacy, and quick thinking. But this mission was different, and it felt strange. All her superiors had told her was that someone out there was collecting secret information on humans. Whoever it was, they knew things they shouldn't, things that could harm her people if they ended up in the wrong hands. Her orders were clear: find the source, learn what they know, and put a stop to it. The station Marla arrived at was nothing like the places she was used to. Known as Station X9, it floated in the middle of a neon-lit part of space, home to outcasts, traders, and smugglers from every species. The air smelled of strange spices and fuel, and the lights flashed in bright, unnatural colors, as if they were meant to distract or confuse new arrivals. Crowds of aliens pushed past her, each one with their own business to attend to, eyes scanning her uniform but moving on quickly, as if her presence meant trouble. And maybe it did. Marla's eyes scanned the crowd for her contact. Threx. The agency had told her little about him, only that he was a local and knew his way around the darker parts of the galaxy. They warned her he was tricky, someone who might know more than he let on. She felt a little uneasy as she moved through the crowd, wondering what kind of alien Threx would be. Lieutenant Marla, I presume. The voice was deep and smooth, with a touch of mischief. Marla turned to find a tall, thin figure with green scales and a long tail. His eyes were narrow and sharp, and he wore a sly smile. His clothes were simple, but there was something about his posture that hinted he was used to getting what he wanted. I'm Threx, he said, bowing slightly with a grin that made Marla even more cautious. I hear you're looking for secrets. Not just any secrets, Marla replied, keeping her tone firm. There's someone here who has information about humans. Dangerous information. My job is to find them. Threx chuckled, nodding as if he expected that answer. Ah, so you're here to meet Call. Call. Marla repeated, raising an eyebrow. This was the first she'd heard of a name. Threx's grin grew wider. Call, the keeper of secrets. He knows things that even the leaders of planets don't. They say he collects secrets like some collect rare stones. And lucky for you, he's right here on this station. If you really want answers, you'll need to go his way. Marla narrowed her eyes, studying Threx. She didn't trust him. Not yet, anyway. But he seemed to know what he was talking about. She weighed her options. It was risky, but this Cal sounded like exactly the type of person she was looking for. Take me to him, she said after a pause. Threx's eyes gleamed, and he nodded. As you wish. But a word of warning, Lieutenant. Call doesn't share his secrets freely. If you want what he knows, you'll have to prove you're worthy. Marla straightened, meeting Threx's gaze with determination. I didn't come all this way for nothing. If I have to prove myself, so be it. Threx led her through the station, weaving through dark hallways and hidden doors that Marla hadn't even noticed before. The place was a maze, and without him, she might have been lost. They eventually reached a large room with soft, glowing lights. In the center sat a figure surrounded by screens and floating data crystals, each one showing images or text in languages Marla didn't recognize. The figure looked up, eyes sharp and almost amused. He was smaller than she expected, but there was something about him, an air of mystery and intelligence. This must be Call. So you've come looking for private details, he said, his voice smooth and knowing. Come my way, and maybe, just maybe, I'll share them with you. Marla held her ground, feeling the weight of his gaze. She knew this was just the beginning, but she was ready for whatever Call had in store. Her mission was just getting started, and something told her it would be more challenging and more dangerous than anything she had faced before. The Secret Keeper. Marla stood in front of Call, the mysterious keeper of secrets. He looked nothing like she expected. Instead of a tall, powerful figure, Call was small and wore simple, flowing clothes. His eyes were sharp, though, with a knowing look that seemed to pierce right through her. Marla had met many people who claimed to know secrets, but something about Call felt different. This was a person who held power, not through weapons or strength, but through the knowledge he guarded. "So, you're the one looking for private details," Call said, his voice calm and almost mocking. "The human who thinks she can find answers here." Marla kept her expression steady, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm here because someone has been gathering information on my people, dangerous information. My mission is to find out what you know and ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." Call tilted his head, looking amused. "And what makes you think you are the right hands, Lieutenant?" Marla felt a spark of anger at his question but pushed it down. She needed to stay focused. "I was sent here by the Intergalactic Security Agency. They trust me to handle this." Call chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "The agency, they think they can control everything with their rules and agents. But some secrets cannot be controlled." He looked her over, as if measuring her strength and resolve. "If you want to know what I know, you'll have to show me you're worthy of it." Marla crossed her arms. "What do you want me to do?" Call smiled, pleased that she hadn't backed down. "I have 3 tests for you, Lieutenant Marla. Each one will test a different part of who you are. Pass them, and I will tell you what you want to know. Fail, and I'll send you back with nothing." Marla nodded. She had no choice but to agree. This was her only lead, and she couldn't leave empty-handed. Threx, who had been standing quietly in the background, stepped forward. "I'll guide you through the tests," he said with a grin. Marla still didn't fully trust him, but she didn't have much of a choice. She followed Threx as he led her out of Call's chamber and into a long, dimly lit corridor. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Lieutenant?" Threx asked, glancing back at her. Marla's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't ready." The first test took them to a small room filled with strange alien technology. Marla recognized some of the devices, but was unfamiliar with many others. In the center of the room was a large, complex machine that glowed softly. "This is a truth detector," Threx explained. "It reads your intentions. You'll need to answer questions honestly if you want to pass. Any lie, and it will know." Marla nodded, stepping forward to face the machine. It hummed quietly as it activated. A voice echoed in the room, calm and mechanical. "Who are you?" it asked. "I am Lieutenant Marla, an agent of the Intergalactic Security Agency," she replied. The machine paused, then asked, "Why do you seek knowledge of these secrets?" Marla took a deep breath. "To protect my people," she said, meaning every word. She hoped that was enough. The machine was silent for a moment before a small light blinked green. She had passed the first part of the test. Threx gave her a nod of approval. "Not bad, Lieutenant, but that was just the beginning." For the second test, Threx led her to a dark, twisting maze deep within the station. The walls seemed to shift and move, making it hard to tell which direction she was going. Marla quickly realized the test was not only about finding her way, but also about keeping calm under pressure. "Find your way out," Threx said simply, then disappeared, leaving her alone. Marla took a deep breath, focusing on her training. Step by step, she moved forward, trusting her instincts. Every corner she turned seemed to lead her back to where she started, but she kept going, refusing to let frustration or fear cloud her mind. After what felt like hours, she finally spotted the exit and stepped through, exhausted but triumphant. When she emerged, Threx was waiting with a grin. Impressive. Most people give up or panic. Marla didn't respond, too focused on what the final test might be. She had come too far to fail now. The third test was different. Threx led her to a quiet room, with only a small device on a table in the middle. Call's voice echoed through speakers in the room. "For this final test, Lieutenant, you must decide. The truth or the lie. A screen blinked on, showing information on her own agency, secrets and betrayals she had never imagined. Marla was stunned. Call was testing her loyalty, forcing her to choose between what she had come to believe and the painful truth about her agency. But Marla knew what she had to do. Standing tall, she chose the truth, even if it meant facing the hard realities of her own organization. Call's voice came through, soft and approving. "You have passed, Lieutenant. Now, I will show you what you seek." Marla braced herself, knowing that the real secrets were just beginning to unfold. Tests and trials. Marla felt a mix of relief and tension as she prepared for the final test. The first two tests had been challenging enough, pushing her honesty and patience. But now, as she stood in front of Call's small, quiet room with Threx by her side, she wondered if she was truly ready for whatever came next. Call's voice echoed through the speakers, sounding both calm and intimidating. "You have passed the first two tests, Lieutenant Marla. You've shown honesty and courage. But the third test is different. It is not just a test of skill, it is a test of trust." Marla glanced at Threx, who gave her a slight smile. Despite his sly grin, there was something sincere in his gaze this time. Maybe he respected her, or maybe he just enjoyed the challenge. Either way, Marla wasn't sure she could fully trust him, but she had no choice now. "Step forward, Lieutenant," Call's voice commanded. Marla entered the small room, where a single device lay on a table. It was an odd-looking box with blinking lights and a touchpad. She eyed it cautiously, wondering what Call had in store for her. "This device," Call explained through the speakers, "holds information on every agent in your agency. It can tell you things even your superiors don't know. But here is the choice. If you open it, you must share all the information with me. I will know everything your agency is hiding, including their secrets about humanity." Marla's heart pounded. She had come here to protect her people, not expose them. And yet, this was her test. If she refused, she would fail, and she would be sent back without any of the answers she needed. But if she agreed, she risked giving Call powerful secrets about her people. "You must choose," Call said, his voice softer now, as if he knew the weight of the decision. Marla took a deep breath, thinking about her mission and the trust her agency had placed in her. She didn't want to fail, but she couldn't betray her own kind. Finally, she looked up at the speaker. "I won't open it. My people's secrets are not for sale." For a moment, there was only silence. Then Call's voice returned, sounding almost pleased. "Very well, Lieutenant. You have passed the test of loyalty." The device's lights blinked off, and Marla felt a wave of relief wash over her. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. Call wasn't done with her yet. Threx gave her a nod of approval. "Not bad, Lieutenant. You handled that better than most." Marla shot him a look, unsure if he was teasing her or genuinely impressed. But before she could respond, the door opened, and Call appeared in person for the first time. He was small and dressed simply, but there was a strange confidence in his posture. "Follow me," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Marla and Threx followed him through a series of winding halls until they reached a vast room filled with screens, data crystals, and strange devices from every corner of the galaxy. The air was thick with a mix of scents, burnt metal, old paper, and a hint of something sweet. It was a place that felt both ancient and advanced. "This is my archive," Call said, gesturing to the endless shelves and screens. "Every secret I've collected, every truth I've kept hidden, is stored here. But even I do not control all the knowledge. Some truths are locked, buried by others who fear their power." Marla looked around, amazed by the sheer volume of information. She saw screens flashing images of distant planets, alien codes, and unfamiliar symbols. She could feel the weight of the knowledge around her, each secret holding the power to change lives, maybe even worlds. Call walked over to one of the screens and tapped it. An image of her agency's symbol appeared, and Marla's attention sharpened. "This," Call said, is what you came for. But be warned, these secrets may not be what you expect. Marla's pulse quickened. She had prepared for this moment, but now, with the answers within reach, she felt a mixture of excitement and dread. What could be so important that even her agency hadn't shared it with her? Call turned to her, his gaze serious. I will show you only a glimpse, Marla. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. But remember, some truths are better left hidden. He pressed a button, and the screen began to flash scenes of her agency's activities. Marla watched, horrified, as images of secret deals, hidden alliances, and betrayals played before her eyes. The agency she had trusted her whole life was involved in things she could barely believe. Her heart sank, and she clenched her fists. She had wanted answers, but now that she had them, she didn't know if she could handle the truth. Threx stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes knowing the truth is the hardest part, he said quietly. Marla took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had passed the tests and learned the secrets, but now she faced her biggest challenge yet, deciding what to do with the truth she had uncovered. The truth revealed. Marla stood silently, her eyes fixed on the screen that Call had activated. The images and documents flashing before her showed things she never imagined her agency could be involved in. Every scene, every hidden deal, and every secret connection slowly tore at the trust she had once felt for the organization she had dedicated her life to. Threx, standing beside her, watched her reaction closely. He seemed almost sympathetic, as if he understood the shock she was feeling. Marla wondered how many agents like her had come here, faced with the same truths, each one forced to decide where their loyalty truly lay. Call cleared his throat, drawing Marla's attention back to him. This is the truth of your agency, Lieutenant Marla, he said calmly, but his eyes held a seriousness that made her heart sink further. The agency you serve is not as noble as you may have believed. It guards its own secrets, even from those who think they're part of its mission to protect. Marla took a deep breath, her fists clenched at her sides. But why? She asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Why would they hide this? What are they trying to achieve? Call gave her a long, quiet look before he responded. Power, influence, control over people and planets alike. They hold secrets not just to protect, but to manipulate. They keep certain truths hidden to keep others dependent on their protection. Marla's mind raced. She had always thought the agency was about keeping the galaxy safe, protecting innocent lives. But now she could see a darker side, one that used its power to control rather than to protect. You have a choice now, Marla, Call continued, his tone softer. You can go back, pretend you never saw this, and continue to serve as you always have. Or you can take this knowledge and decide what to do with it. Marla's heart pounded as she thought about what this decision meant. If she chose to reveal these secrets, her career would be over. The agency would never forgive her, and she might even put herself in danger. But could she live with herself if she returned to work, knowing the truth? She looked at Threx, who watched her with an unreadable expression. What would you do, Threx? She asked quietly, surprising herself. She didn't know why she cared what he thought. But in that moment, she needed someone's guidance. Threx shrugged, his eyes thoughtful. I'm just a guide, Lieutenant. I don't have ties like you do. But I've seen people try to run from the truth, and I've seen others face it head-on. Both paths are hard, but only one of them feels right in the end. Marla nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She didn't want to run, not after coming this far. But she knew it wouldn't be easy to challenge an organization as powerful as her agency. Her decision would need to be careful, calculated. Call spoke again, breaking the silence. There's one more thing you should know. The person gathering these secrets, who you came here to find, isn't me. I am merely a keeper, protecting information. But there is someone else on this station who has been spreading these secrets about humanity. Marla's eyes widened. Someone else. Call nodded. A contact known as Zirak. He's been collecting information on humans, But his reasons are different. He isn't motivated by money or power. He believes that exposing these secrets can bring change, even if it's dangerous. Marla's heart skipped a beat. This was the person she had been sent to find. And now, knowing what she did, she felt conflicted. Zarek might be her target, but he might also be someone who could help her. If he shared her belief in uncovering the truth, maybe he was an ally instead of an enemy. "What do I need to do to meet him?" Marla asked, her voice steady, hiding the storm of emotions within. Kal looked at her approvingly. "I thought you'd want to meet him. Frex will take you to him, but be careful. Zarek is not as trusting as I am. He may not welcome an agent of the agency." Threx gestured for Marla to follow him. "Come on, Lieutenant. Zarek doesn't stay in one place for long. We'll need to move quickly." As they walked down the narrow, dimly lit corridors of the station, Marla couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. She was no longer just following orders. She was making choices for herself, choices that felt right. Her loyalty had shifted, not to the agency, but to the truth, even if that truth was uncomfortable and dangerous. After a few minutes, they arrived at a small, hidden room deep within the station. Frex knocked on the door in a strange pattern, and after a brief pause, the door slid open. Standing there was Zarek, an alien with piercing eyes and a cautious expression. He looked at Marla, recognizing her as an agent, and his gaze hardened. "Why have you come here?" Zarek demanded, his voice laced with distrust. Marla met his eyes, her own expression resolute. "I came here to find answers. I thought I was here to stop you, but now, I think I want to help." Zarek studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If that's true, then you'd better be ready for what comes next. Once you know the full truth, there's no going back." Marla nodded, her heart racing. She knew that from this point on, her life would never be the same. Dark discoveries. Marla took a deep breath, her eyes fixed on Zarek as he watched her with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. She knew this was a turning point. Her mission had led her here, but it was no longer just about completing orders. Now she was choosing to uncover the truth, regardless of the consequences. Zarek gestured for her to sit in the small, dimly lit room. Frex stood nearby, silent but alert, ready for anything. Marla felt the weight of the silence pressing down on her, and she cleared her throat, trying to gather her thoughts. "Tell me," she began, meeting Zarek's eyes, "what are these secrets you're collecting? Why do they matter so much to you?" Zarek's gaze softened slightly, as if he saw something honest in her question. "You humans think you are protectors, that your agency keeps order in the galaxy," he said, his voice low and serious. "But your agency has its own dark side, hidden from the very people who serve it. My goal is to expose those secrets." Marla frowned, still struggling to understand. "But why? What harm has my agency done that justifies risking everything to reveal these secrets?" Zarek took a deep breath, his expression pained. "The agency uses information as a weapon, Lieutenant. It monitors entire planets, collects data on different species, and even interferes with the internal affairs of other worlds, all to control and manipulate. They keep certain species under their influence, while others are pushed aside." Marla's chest tightened. She knew the agency collected intelligence, but she never imagined they would go as far as to interfere with the lives of others for control. Her belief in the agency's mission was crumbling, and each new truth weighed heavier than the last. Zarek reached for a small device on the table and pressed a button. A holographic screen lit up, showing maps, encrypted messages, and images of various planets. Marla watched, recognizing some of the locations as places where her agency had sent agents before. She hadn't known the reason then, but now she saw that these missions weren't just about peacekeeping. "This," Zarek continued, pointing to the map, "is a list of planets where your agency has intervened. Many of these interventions were not for the benefit of those worlds, but to ensure they stayed weak or dependent on human support. They create conflicts, fuel rivalries, and keep certain leaders in power, all to maintain control over these worlds. Marla felt anger bubbling up inside her. She thought back to her training, the promises of justice, the oaths to protect innocent lives. Had it all been a lie? She looked at Threx, wondering if he knew about this. But Threx just gave her a sympathetic look, as if he understood her feelings but couldn't change the truth. As Zarek scrolled through more files, Marla's eye caught a particular document labeled Project Nightfall. She pointed at it. "What's Project Nightfall?" Zarek's expression darkened. "That, Lieutenant, is one of the agency's most dangerous operations. It involves the use of advanced technology to disrupt the natural resources of certain planets. With Project Nightfall, the agency can make resources disappear or become scarce, forcing those planets to depend on human aid and support." Marla was horrified. Project Nightfall was nothing less than a tool for control, a way to keep entire worlds dependent on her agency's help. Her stomach turned at the thought that her people, her leaders, were willing to go this far. "But why do they do this?" she asked, feeling a mix of betrayal and confusion. What could they possibly gain from controlling these worlds so tightly? Zarek sighed. "Power, Marla. Control over resources, influence over leaders, and the ability to shape galactic politics. The agency wants a galaxy that answers to them, and they're willing to sacrifice countless lives to achieve it." Marla clenched her fists, the anger and frustration nearly overwhelming her. She had believed in the agency's mission, but now she saw that it was just a mask, hiding a darker agenda. Every mission she had gone on, every risk she had taken, it had all been in service of a lie. Threx stepped forward, breaking the silence. "You're brave, Lieutenant. Most people would look away from this truth, but the question is, what will you do now?" Marla looked at Zarek, and then at Threx, her heart pounding. She knew the choice she faced was dangerous, but she also knew she couldn't ignore what she had learned. She could return to the agency, report back as if nothing had happened, and keep living a lie. Or she could choose to stand against the agency, even if it meant risking everything she had worked for. "What happens if I expose this?" she asked, her voice steady but tense. Zarek met her gaze, his expression serious. "If you expose these secrets, you will become a target. The agency will come after you, and they will not show mercy. But if you do nothing, these worlds will continue to suffer. The agency will continue its control, and innocent lives will pay the price." Marla's mind raced, weighing her options. She felt the weight of her duty, the pull of her loyalty, but now those feelings were mixed with a sense of purpose and justice. This was bigger than her, bigger than any mission she had ever undertaken. After a long pause, Marla took a deep breath and looked directly at Zarek. "Show me everything. If I'm going to fight this, I need to know it all." Zarek nodded, respect glimmering in his eyes. "Then be prepared, Lieutenant. Once you step into this darkness, there's no going back." Marla nodded, her resolve firm. She knew the risks, but the truth mattered more. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, even if it meant walking into the darkest depths of the agency's secrets. The hard choice. Marla sat at the small table, her heart racing as Zarek prepared to show her everything he had gathered. She could feel the weight of the decision ahead of her. Every secret she uncovered would lead her deeper into a web of danger, but turning back now was not an option. She had already stepped into the shadows, and there was no returning to the light without knowing the full truth. Zarek activated the holographic screen again, and a series of images and documents filled the air around them. Marla stared, her mind racing to process everything she saw. The files showed a timeline of the agency's operations, missions that seemed innocent at first, but revealed a more sinister purpose upon closer inspection. "This is the beginning," Zarek said, his voice steady. "These missions were framed as peacekeeping efforts, but what they really did was create chaos, opening the door for manipulation and control." Marla watched as images flashed by. Conflict zones, leaders being placed into power, and resources being drained from innocent planets. She felt a growing anger swell inside her. Why would anyone choose to do this? How can they justify hurting others to gain power? Zarek looked at her, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. Because, Marla, there are always those who believe they are above others. They think that controlling worlds makes them stronger, that it secures their own future. But they forget the lives they ruin in the process. Marla felt her heart twist at the realization. She had believed in her agency's mission, convinced it was noble and just. But now she saw it for what it truly was, a machine of manipulation, using her and countless others as tools to achieve its dark goals. As Zarek continued to scroll through the information, he paused at a file labeled Operation Silent Shadow. Marla leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. What is that? This operation is particularly troubling, Zarek said, his voice lowering. It involves infiltrating other planets' governments to sway their decisions. The agency uses agents like you to gain access, to plant seeds of doubt and fear. It's all part of a larger plan to keep those worlds dependent and under control. Marla felt sick to her stomach. The thought of being a pawn in such a ruthless game was unbearable. She had signed up to protect, to serve, not to destroy. This is wrong, she whispered, her voice shaking. I can't believe they would go this far. Zarek nodded, understanding her pain. And that is why you are at a crossroads now. You have seen the truth, but what will you do with it? Exposing these operations could bring down the agency, but it could also put you and everyone you care about in danger. Marla took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. She knew that if she chose to expose the agency, she would be risking everything, her career, her friends, even her life. But could she live with herself if she did nothing? Could she stand by while others suffered because of her inaction? I need time to think, she said finally, her voice steady. This is more than I ever imagined. I thought I was fighting for justice, but now I see I might have been part of the problem. Zarek's expression softened, and he gave her a nod of understanding. Take all the time you need. The truth is powerful, and it can be dangerous. But remember, keeping it hidden may lead to more suffering. As Marla considered her options, she felt the weight of the agency's expectations pressing down on her. Every day she had worn the uniform had been filled with pride and purpose. But now, that pride felt tainted by the truth she had uncovered. She thought about her fellow agents, the friends she had made, and the sacrifices they all had made in the name of peace. What if I expose them, but they retaliate? Marla asked, looking into Zarek's eyes for reassurance. What if they come after my friends? What if they come after me? Zarek leaned forward, his tone serious. That is a risk you must accept. The agency is powerful, but knowledge is a weapon. If you choose to fight back, you will not be alone. There are those who have been waiting for someone like you to stand against them. Marla felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps she wouldn't have to do this alone. Perhaps there were others who had suffered under the agency's control, just as she had. What do you suggest? She asked, her determination growing. How do I begin? First, gather evidence. We need to compile everything you have learned here and present it to others who can help. There are journalists, activists, and even agents within your agency who may be willing to listen, Zarek advised. Marla nodded, a plan forming in her mind. She would gather her evidence, build her case, and then reach out to those who could help her expose the truth. She was no longer just an agent. She was becoming a warrior for justice. Zarek smiled slightly, sensing the change in her. You have a fire inside you, Lieutenant. Don't let it go out. Trust your instincts and remember why you started this journey. Marla felt renewed strength coursing through her. She had made her choice, and she was ready to fight for what was right. The hard path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was determined to walk it. As they prepared to leave the room, she felt the weight of her decision settle around her. This was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to make a difference, to bring light to the darkness. She was ready to face the agency and expose the truth, no matter the cost. A dangerous balance. Marla stepped out of the small room, her mind buzzing with the weight of her decision. She had chosen to fight against the agency she had trusted for so long, and now she felt both exhilarated and terrified. With Zarek's help, she was ready to expose the truth. But with that truth came danger. Danger she could feel closing in on her from every direction. Threx walked beside her, his presence steadying. "What's the plan now, Lieutenant?" he asked, his voice calm and supportive. Marla appreciated his quiet strength. She knew she could rely on him as she navigated this new path. "We need to gather as much evidence as we can," Marla replied, her mind racing. "Zarek has files and documents that show the agency's wrongdoings. We'll compile everything and then find someone who can help us expose it all." "Do you have anyone in mind?" Threx asked, raising an eyebrow. Marla thought for a moment. "There's a journalist named Kale who has a reputation for uncovering corruption. If we can get the evidence to him, he might help us reach a wider audience." Threx nodded. "That's a good start. But be careful. The agency will be on high alert now that you're involved." As they made their way through the dark corridors of the station, Marla's heart raced with both excitement and fear. She was stepping into a world filled with shadows and hidden dangers, but she was determined to bring the agency's secrets to light. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the station, causing Marla to freeze. Lights flashed red, and an urgent voice echoed over the intercom. "Attention. All personnel report to your stations. A security breach has been detected." Threx's expression turned serious. "We need to move quickly. The agency must have caught wind of what's happening." Marla nodded, her instincts kicking in. "We should find a safe place to regroup and come up with a plan." They hurried through the hallways, avoiding areas with heavy security. Marla's mind raced as they searched for a secure spot. She thought about how easily everything could fall apart. If the agency discovered her intentions before she had the chance to gather the evidence, all would be lost. Finally, they found an empty storage room, its door slightly ajar. Marla pushed it open, and they slipped inside, closing the door quietly behind them. The room was dark, filled with boxes and old equipment. It felt like a temporary refuge from the chaos outside. "Now what?" Threx asked, glancing around the dimly lit space. Marla took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We need to contact Zarek and get the files. He should have a secure way to transmit the information to Kale." As she spoke, she pulled out her communicator and activated it. A faint light illuminated her face, casting long shadows around the room. "Zarek, do you read me?" she said, trying to keep her voice steady. There was a moment of silence before Zarek's voice crackled through. "I'm here, Marla. What's your status?" "We're safe for now, but the agency knows something is up," she replied urgently. "We need the files you have to send to Kale." "Can you do that?" "I can, but we need to be quick. I'll send you a secure link. Make sure to cover your tracks," Zarek warned. Marla nodded, her heart pounding. "I will." "Thank you, Zarek." Within moments, a message appeared on her communicator. "I've sent the link. It's encrypted, so make sure Kale knows how to access it. Once you send the files, erase all traces." Marla quickly copied the link and saved it. "Got it. We'll send the files right away." "Be careful, Marla. The agency will not take this lightly. Trust no one," Zarek cautioned before the connection ended. "Okay, let's do this," Marla said, her determination solidifying. "We need to find a way to contact Kale and get the evidence to him." As they prepared to leave the storage room, Threx placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember, balance is key. You need to keep your head clear and think strategically. One wrong move, and everything could come crashing down." Marla nodded, understanding the gravity of his words. She was no longer just an agent. She was now a player in a dangerous game. Every decision would need to be calculated, every action precise. They stepped out of the room, scanning the hallway for any signs of danger. The alarm still echoed through the station, making it hard to hear anything else. Marla's heart raced as they moved cautiously, trying to stay out of sight. "Where do we find Cal?" Threx asked, keeping his voice low. "He often hangs out at a bar near the docking bay. It's a place where people gather, and he's known for picking up on rumors," Marla replied, her mind focused on the task ahead. They made their way through the station, taking care to avoid security patrols. Each corner they turned felt like a risk, but Marla was determined to reach Cal. She needed someone who could help her get the truth out. Finally, they arrived at the bar, a dimly lit place filled with the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. Marla spotted Cal in a corner booth, his eyes scanning the room as he jotted notes in a small notepad. "Stay close," she whispered to Threx as they approached. "I'll handle this." Cal looked up as they neared, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "Marla, what are you doing here? You look—" "Listen, we don't have much time," Marla interrupted, her voice urgent. "I have important information to share, but we need to act fast." Cal raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What kind of information? She took a deep breath, knowing she was about to expose the truth that could change everything. "I have evidence about the agency's operations, secrets that could bring them down, but we need to send it out before they catch wind of what's happening." Cal leaned closer, his interest piqued. "I'm listening." Marla quickly explained the situation, the files she had gathered, and the link Zarek had sent her. She could see the realization dawning on Cal's face, and she felt a glimmer of hope. "Let's do this," he said, determination in his eyes. "We'll make sure the galaxy knows the truth." As they huddled together, Marla felt a sense of camaraderie. For the first time since her world had turned upside down, she felt that she was not alone in this fight. Together, they would take on the agency and expose the truth, no matter the danger that lay ahead.